Hi, my name is Milta Ortiz, and I am 51 years old. I am Associate Artistic Director at Borderlands Theater, and our mission is to highlight local stories of national relevance and to honor and preserve the Sonoran history, the indigenous history, local history, and we have a focus on the Mexican American experience, the Latina experience.
And my name is Marc Pinate. I'm 52. I'm the artistic director here at Borderlands Theater. And the work that we've been doing in the historic barrios here has been a lot of just preservation of, folkways, heritage practices, and also highlighting the history, the contributions of the Mexican American community to the cultural fabric of Tucson. And so that takes different forms, but it always starts with gathering oral histories. We've done 4 of these projects now since starting in 2015. And we'll, find a neighborhood that, wants to work with us. And then we spend about a year collecting oral histories, and we collect, maybe up to 20. And these are elders. These are people that, are talking about the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. And really that was, it's post-World War II. So it was really, I guess, the golden age of these neighborhoods. It was a time when, people were coming back from the war and getting the GI Bill and going to college. There was a great economy. People had jobs. And even though folks maybe, I guess you could consider poor or working class, when you talk to all these folks who were all children at the time, I have, if I had a nickel for every time I heard, oh, we were poor, but I didn't know it. And what they talk about is the community, the extended family, and the friends. Everybody lived nearby. It was because people made their homes out of adobe often. As the family grew, new additions were added on, or new houses were built. Because these folks are the folks that did the plumbing and electricity all over the city. They had the know-how to build more homes themselves. And the cooking, the ways things were cooked, which all is this amazing mixture of Spanish and indigenous, of those two cultures coming together for the last 400 years. The values, of course, the church, but the role that plays in the way the family is central to everything. So these are ideas and ways that are still around sometimes, especially amongst older generations, but certainly are threatened, not just by gentrification, but by just modern things, right? But the gentrification, the displacement of folks from these communities, so they're not concentrated. And so people begin to get spread all over Tucson, and so that also changes the ways people gather and the traditions that are maintained. So we collect all these stories, and then from those we also work with committees of the residents. And they work with us from day one, so they're usually working with us for a year or two, and they give us the direction. They tell us who we should talk to. And once we have the stories, and we make plays out of them, we make scripts, and we read those scripts to the committee of residents first, and we get their feedback. And well, I don't like that. Why do you got to focus on that? And and then they talk amongst themselves, and no, we need to tell that story. We can't just make it all look pretty. It wasn't always pretty, and they work it out, and then what they finally decide is that's the direction we go. And then we bring actors and musicians and puppeteers, and we have a test audience of maybe 100 community members and just kind of hear a reading of it. We get more feedback. And then finally, we cast it. We often involve youth and elders from the communities to be in it, help make the sets. And then we present it somewhere, if it's in a particular neighborhood we're focusing on, in that neighborhood, in a park. The first one we did was about the neighborhood that was in the convention center. And so there's no more neighborhood where the convention center is. So we did it at the convention center and tried where the neighborhood used to be and tried to resurrect at least the spirit of that neighborhood in different ways. And what we find is that, for the people that remember those times, it's very, very moving. It's very emotional to them. But for their grandchildren, it's such an opportunity for young people to see their own history and their culture and the way, how things used to be as an origin story. I think we all need our origin stories. That's a place of power, in a place of understanding. Why are we who we are today? And so that's been the work. We've done 4 of these Barrio Stories projects, and it's each one is its own very different thing, but they all are really places of joy and celebration and healing.
And a lot of what we do is to celebrate the resilience and joy that brings about hope in our people and in our humanity. I think a lot of our stories have a component of resilience, and that resilience brings about hope and joy. And so we really focus on celebrating those moments of joy because we know that they inspire hope. So that is a big focus for us, and also for the artists involved to have a joyful experience, to find fulfillment in the work that we do, and to also have it be sustainable work, so work that feeds, doesn't actually take away from the soul. And as far as Barrio Stories, the first Barrio Stories that we did here on the grounds of the TCC didn't actually have as many neighbors as the other Barrio Stories because of the history here. And so the way that I joined the project was to teach a class to youth. They received college credit. The class was at Pima Community College, and they learned ethnographic practices and how to interview a subject so that we could gather the oral histories that then were turned into the play for Barrio Stories. So we supplemented the oral histories that Marc and myself and some other people were able to obtain. The students also gathered a lot of the oral histories that we used. And so in the process, we had some local youth that weren't aware of the history here. They had no idea why their Nana and Tata didn't want to come out to the TCC. And then they realized that it was part of their history. And I think one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed from Barrio Stories was seen on Friday. We had a special matinee for students, and so TUSD brought like 6 buses to the event, and there were all these young people learning Tucson history that they would otherwise not have known. And so it was really wonderful to hear them say, oh, that character reminds me of my Nana, the Nana that was sweeping the front of the house in this neighborhood before it was torn down to build the TCC. And so some of the folks that showed up said, you know what, I didn't go to my granddaughter's graduation because it was a TCC, and I said I would never step foot on that place again. And they didn't come, and they did show up for Barrio Stories. And I think the reason for that is because it wasn't our intention to go back and relive the trauma of folks getting moved out of their neighborhood for redevelopment. We wanted to honor and celebrate the history that's here. So we wanted to validate the history that was here. And a lot of Tucsonans, the young people, didn't know that this was the first Mexican American barrio and one of the first barrios in Tucson. So those are deep roots connected to our city, and I think it means a lot to folks. And so when we sought out to celebrate and honor that history and validate that history, folks who refused to come out before were able to come because they felt validated. They felt like it was important to go back and celebrate that history. So I think that is the beauty of the Barrio Stories project. And I think that planted seeds for what's currently happening with the TCC, with the Multiple Stories project. We get to be part of that. Marc is actually working with that project to, it's a VR project. He can talk more about that, but sharing some of that history. But I think because Barrio Stories activated this space and celebrated what once was a vibrant community here and filled it back up with multi-generational folks in this space, like it would have been back before the TCC was built. I think people around town, the leaders around town, realize that it's a prime space to celebrate history, to celebrate culture. And so now the TCC is going to have a multiple histories, sort of an exhibit here in the plaza of the Tucson Convention Center. And the Tucson Convention Center Plaza was renamed from the architect name that built to a local resident who fought to save La Placita, which was a part of the barrio that was torn down. Alba Bustamante Torres fought to save that Placita and did a lot to recollect the history of this area. And so the plaza is now named the Alba Bustamante Torres Plaza, which is, I think, a seed that was planted with Barrio Stories. And so we've been told by folks that were involved in the committee to make that happen. So I think that's a really wonderful cherry on top that we hadn't even dreamed of.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the VR project that you're part of?
Yeah. So it's an augmented reality project that is was funded by Rio Nuevo, the development agency, and was part of a big renovations that included building a hotel and other things that were improvements that were done. And so as a way to, I think, exactly what the first Barrio Stories did, to honor, to remember, but also a token of a sort of apology, I think, for what was done here. A very high-tech company in California, it's called Ripples, was contracted to build augmented reality exhibits. There's going to be multiple exhibits. So it's just like a museum. You go to different rooms and you see, whatever exhibits about the history. You'll see it on your phone. So there'll be QR codes throughout the space, or you scan it and download some kind of app. But it's all free, and so aside from archival photographs of the people that lived here and music, there's videos we're filming where people are showing heritage practices, and so they just sort of pop up all over the plaza, and they like videos of people dressed in period from the 1940s or even the 1800s, telling you about the history of the community that was here and the different communities. It wasn't just Mexican American. There was African American community. There was the Beehive was a little dive bar, and next to it was a place called the Chicken Shack, and that's where black musicians from all over the country performed there. The porters, for the S&P, the Southern Pacific Railroad, were tended to all be black. That was their day job, but when they would stay the night here, if they were musicians, they had their instruments, they would go to the Beehive. So there was people from all over the country playing and dancing. And Native American, the Honoatham had a Indian agency just south of where the convention center is, and there was a community of Native folks that lived there and came, and the women were housekeepers and nannies, and the men did construction, all in this area. So all of those communities, people like Lalo Guerrero, father of Chicano music, came from here, will be highlighted through 2D images, through 3D videos. Some of the buildings, the Chinese markets, big important part of the barrio. Some corners had 4 markets, a market on every corner. We are creating a 3D rendering of one of those buildings, the actual building, from archival photographs. You can walk all around 4 sides of it. You can go inside of it, and there'll be a wall that looks like all the products and things you could buy, and another wall is all the family photos of the family that ran that store. So it's pretty incredible, and certainly something that I think the young people will be attracted to. I hope older folks can navigate it too, because they'll certainly enjoy it. And that uses video, music, and certainly visuals, pictures, to bring to life, the ghosts, if you will, of the neighborhood that was here. And that's pretty, and that's what we did with set pieces and 50 actors and period costumes. We did that in 2016, and now it'll be here, rain or shine, 24 hours a day, free to the public, always ready to be experienced. It's pretty amazing.